Counseling Black Women Present Roundtable Talks. Today we're going to be talking about raising Black daughters, which is a topic that's near and dear to all of us here. Can't wait to dive into it. I'm Dr. Kimber Shelton. I'm a licensed counseling psychologist in Dallas, Texas. I have a private practice, and I am also the author of a handbook on counseling African American women, the author and co-editor. And I have two twin daughters who are 4 years old, and I've been married for about 8 years. That's a little bit about me. So we'll learn some more about our other presenters here. Michelle?
Yes, hi, I'm Michelle Lynn. I'm also a licensed psychologist. I'm the director of the Counseling Center at Oglethorpe University in Atlanta. I also have a very, very small private practice as well. I have been married for 25 years. I have a daughter and a son. My 19-year-old daughter, is a sophomore in college. And yeah, so that's a little bit about my background.
Thanks, Michelle.
I forgot to mention, which is important, I am also co-editor and co-author of a handbook on counseling Black women. I'm very proud to be a part of that group.
Awesome. I think I'm next. My name is LaKeisha Gantt. I am a licensed psychologist, and I live here in Athens, Georgia, born and raised. I'm one of the handful of people that are natives of Athens that are still here. I have been married for 21 years, and my husband and I have 4 children. It seems like 10, but it's only 4 of them. 2 are still in school. We have one in high school and one in, Gabby's in her last year of elementary school. And then we have 2 that are in college. And yeah, so I'm a licensed psychologist. Like Michelle and Kimber, I have a small private practice in Athens where I work with a variety of different people, but primarily I offer consulting as well as working with people that are part of marginalized populations.
Okay, I think I'm next. I'm Dr. Megan Pickens. I only do private practice. I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor in Arlington, Texas. I specialize in work with high achieving Black women. I am single. Yeah, that'll be a whole different show if we talk about dating. But I have been healthily divorced since 2016, and I'm okay with that. I was married for 7 years. I have a daughter who is 28 years old. So I heard you talking about the littles, and I was like, man, that seems like such a long time ago for me. So, but I enjoy it. My daughter is cool. I love her. And is that all I'm supposed to say? Is that it? Mm-hmm. I'm not an author. I mean, I've done a dissertation and a book chapter, and I'm working on another book chapter. So that's me.
Thank you, Megan.
Well, good morning. I'll round out the group. I am Dr. Eliza Belle, and I'm a licensed psychologist. I live in Birmingham, Alabama. I have worked for our state's Department of Mental Health going on 10 years this year throughout multiple areas, our hospital system, and now in administration. I work as a director of psychological and behavioral services out of our central office in Montgomery, our capital. I also have a private practice called the Life Collective in downtown Birmingham, where I do consulting. I do projects with community organizations to help bring health to families, individuals, and couples. I really have a passion for kind of rebuilding some of our broken Black communities. And I believe that our families are where we start. And that can be in any type of unit, whether it's family units, friendships, relationships, teams. I'm all about it. And so I have been married going on 12 years this October and have 2 littles. I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old daughter. I also helped co-parent a now 22-year-old daughter who is living her best adult life as she believes. And that's a whole journey when I think about coming into my relationship when she was 5 years old and seeing her through the full process, and then now raising two little ones in a different time zone and in a different area of life and society. But either way, it's been part of the journey. I'm sure it's what we're here to talk about today, because we all can relate in some different areas and also add input on some different areas. So I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Very happy to have you here today and appreciate hearing the different experiences already. And we're going to be talking about raising Black daughters. But at one point, we were all little Black girls who were growing up, and our own personal experiences can influence how we are now parenting. Before this conversation, we were having, before recording, we were having a conversation about our children having softer lives than we had. So I'm curious from each of you, what was it like for you growing up as a little Black girl, and how do you see that influencing who you are as a mom and the way that you parent?
I think one thing for me that I think about is birth order. When I was growing up, I do feel like for girls in general, and for Black girls, there just felt like a narrow lane, too narrow of a lane, in my opinion, and in my experience. So when I think about, I always wanted to have a daughter and a son. That was what I wanted. But I did feel like I wanted my daughter to be born first, because I was born second in my initial sibling group, and then came to be part of a blended family where I was the big sister to two younger sisters. But my older brother, our older brother, I felt like he benefited from not just being a male, but being the oldest. And I think as a young Black girl, again, I just felt like my position was kind of small, if you will. Not seeing, many reflections of me on TV, that I can name on one hand, Tootie, Facts of Life, Whitney Houston when she came along. It's just really, and so I honed in on those images. So yeah, that definitely was part of my experience, and I wanted it. I was very intentional with my daughter about her having an expansive, wide view of experiences and opportunities and views of Black women and what they're doing. And, started that really young with, Princess Tiana, or, showing her, you're not going to watch this Cinderella. We're going to put in the Cinderella with Brandy. That's the Cinderella you're going to see first. And so, I had that in my head as I was navigating with her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Michelle, sounds like from your own experiences of maybe patriarchy and those socialized gender roles, it was important for you that your daughter, her initial experiences were very different from that, and wanting her to be first, so at least she'd be able to have the age or the respect that comes from age that she may not have as a younger sibling.
Yeah, I think you're right. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll say for me, I grew up the daughter of a little Black girl who then grew up and said, when I have girls, I want to have them have a different experience than I did. So there was some fear-led parenting, some cautionary-led parenting that came from my mom's own experiences. I keep a picture of my grandmother in the back, but my grandmother, Eliza, who I'm named after, actually passed away having my mom. And so I was a little girl who was born of a mother who didn't grow up with her own mother, and actually had fears in raising daughters, and also experienced all of the gamut, of course, that her generation experienced. She integrated her school in a time where that was a really big deal, with a few other Black women who went on to have this collective, but it was a really tumultuous time. She experienced corporate America for 42 years, and it was a very harsh and unrelenting place. And so I felt like as a little girl, I grew up with a very ambitious household of do better than us, be better than us. We want to pave the way. And that was a great environment. I mean, it was a great environment for love and for learning, but it also kind of led this idea of pressures, some evils that I also didn't even know were ahead of me, that I kind of feared that may not have been, but were a little bit coming from my parents' own experiences. And so I remembered, and for all that came, I'm a Southern girl who grew up in a traditionally Christian Black home. And we as mental health professionals kind of know what that also entails. And so for that reason, I believe that there was a environment for structure, but also this, I just don't want anything to happen to my children or happen to my girls. And I also want them to be really excellent. I have an older sister who's like a year older than me, exactly almost. And we grew up almost with the same everything. We were like twins. So we had a lot of the same rearing, and it was a very excelling led type framework that as a middle child and the sister of a person who was like a protege in every way, I rebelled against that. And so my Black girl experience was one where I wanted to figure it out for myself. I didn't want to be perfect. I didn't want to do everything the right way. I didn't have the best grades. I tell people now about even my career journey. It wasn't because I felt like I had to reach the top of the pinnacle of success. I just kept going to school. So I guess it's the whole thing where I wanted to raise girls who had a standard, but a freedom at the same time, because that's what I feel like I wanted. And in some ways, I do believe that if my mom had felt more free herself, she would have been able to see ways that she could have let down some of those walls or guards or things that had her raising girls with this idea that the world is a rough place, and it's a place that's going to eat you up, and you have to do well and you have to succeed, because otherwise you're going to be, discounted. I didn't grow up in a home where I never felt like I felt always validated for being Black. We were a very pro-Black home, but it was also one where we felt like we know what that means for you in America. So therefore, be prepared, be ready, be on top of your game. And again, as a child who really didn't ascribe to the whole do everything at the top, I just didn't know how to always fit into that box. And I think I found myself through that. And the way that I found myself was, how does that look for me? What is that, even knowing what excellence looks like or success looks like for me is imperfection, or it is, doing it my way, or all these things. And that's kind of how I decided to raise, my own girls. And that's what I hope that we're, aiming to do now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I'll have to say that I had a pretty soft life, but it made me more determined. I didn't want my daughter to have a hard life, but I wanted her to have kind of more responsibility. And it's not that I didn't have responsibility, but my mom, just the way that she set things up, I pretty much had everything I wanted. I had never had to learn how to manage money or any of that. And also, I grew up as an only child, so that's the first part. Even though my mom was a single parent, she worked at General Motors. So for, the 70s and 80s, that was a lot of money. So I just had no challenges, really. I had challenges, but not like what everybody else had as far as material things and all of that. But that did mean that she had to work a lot. So I was very independent from a pretty young age. I think how that showed up in adulthood is then, I'm just going to do things my way, kind of like Eliza said. But I colored within the lines. But it was so I could fly under the radar. It wasn't because I was an overachiever. It was because I knew that my mom was busy and she had things to do. And as long as I had good grades and was pretty much undetectable, that I could do what I wanted. And so I kind of grew up with a mom that's, left over from the 60s. So just kind of, you find your own way. She just wasn't, laissez-faire, but she wasn't a tight parent either. So when my daughter grew up, there was some fear in that. I was always making sure that she knew how to manage money. She knew how to manage relationships with men, because that was also a challenge, because, that fierce independence means, you don't need a man. They don't have to be around, all of those kind of things. So that showed up in my attitude in relationships. And then, that just spilled into some things in my adulthood. And so I kind of made sure she was in church, but she could take care of herself and, all of these things. And so in hindsight, as I got older and went to therapy, I kind of figured out, okay, well, this is how, this worked out with my daughter. But I do think that a lot of the intentionality really worked out. It did work out, because she is like an amazing young woman and very headstrong, 28, not married. She's thinking about, she wants to be married, but she's kind of like, I'm saving myself for marriage. I want to have kids when I get married. Like everything is in order. So sometimes that's a challenge because I'm like, everything might not be in order, ma'am. So that's me with my parenting and growing up.
Thanks, Megan. Yeah, we definitely see how being daughters to Black mothers and where they were in their generation definitely had an impact on all of us. My mother was raised in Beckley, West Virginia, which is a small, rural, poor town, and grew up very impoverished with 8 siblings and kind of escaped at 16 out of Beckley. And I think there was the idea that whiteness was better because in her environment that was completely Black, there was a lot of struggles and suffering and poverty. And so, especially my early years, I grew up in very white spaces where literally the only other Black children were my 2 brothers. And because they're older than me, I never saw them at school or they were never around. There was one Asian girl, but we didn't really get a chance to interact either. And I don't remember seeing myself really represented on TV. I wasn't represented in books. And I always knew I was Black, but I didn't understand what that Blackness meant. But I did realize that I felt different, but I wasn't at that time able to connect my difference to me being Black. And then my Blackness wasn't celebrated, and I had internalized those ideas too about whiteness being better or being right, or wanting to acclimate myself to that culture. And I think almost like Eliza, what you were saying about your mom, I've done like a 180 for my kids, and there is some fear-based stuff for me with raising my daughters because we have a very pro-Black home now where say 90% of their books are little Black girls, and 90% of what we watch is about Black girls, Black women, where my mother is saying to me, can't they just read regular books? Well, they can read books about animals, but they also—
Those are regular.
Right. I was thinking the same.
So those dynamics still play out. And then just wanting my daughters to understand who they are and it always be important to them and not have questions about it. So when they have, when they bring up questions, I have multiracial nieces and nephews, and they'll ask me, why is her skin white? And being able to have a conversation about them, that it's not something that's hush hush or we don't talk about these things, but just wanted to be very open. But I do have to balance the fears that I have in the social political environment that we are in. I worry about their safety. I worry about their mental health. I worry about their physical health. And I don't want that to bleed into how I'm parenting, but I do find there's times where I may be more restrictive or controlling, and that's something that I have to keep working on and balancing out.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine the challenges of raising a child in this climate. A Black female, I mean, I commend you on that for sure.
Yeah, I would say, I've sort of, as I've listened, I've heard like different threads that resonate with me as far as my upbringing. I would describe my upbringing as free. But there were things that I think I experienced and saw as a child that I didn't know what to make of it, right? So we were poor. I just didn't know we were poor, or, I lived in a community that was over policed, and that there was violence sometimes. But then I also saw like I had the spectrum of experiences. So I saw like the beauty of like community and the beauty of relationships. And my mom worked a lot. And so there were things that I think I internalized that I didn't really, we don't realize we're internalizing that this is normal. Like this is a norm. And so I think overall, my mom was very, she was supportive and she had to work. But she always instilled in us, like, I don't want you to work as hard as I work. And, 30 years later, I'm working as hard as she's working, but it's a different, so I don't know where those internalized messages stop at actually. But I, it does play into my parenting. Like I grew up with just being surrounded by Black people. As far as like my neighbors and the kids that I went out and played ball with. And then at school, of course, it was more diverse. But I do think that there was, the message to us that this is, you have to work hard, you have to, put forth your best effort. But there was not necessarily a message because, the world will eat you up, or there's racism and there are injustices. I think I sort of grew up in there was the message that you work hard and you worry about you, and we sort of navigate these injustices. We just do the best we can. And I think at some point that shaped who I am. It sort of created this urgency and a curiosity to know more and to have a fuller explanation of why we're working so hard. you know and so yeah, we interestingly, I think the books and the toys I had, they were not, it was like, this is what we can afford. And at that time it wasn't that, I don't think I thought, and even looking back, I don't think my mom was like, okay, well, I want you to be exposed to, Black kids in books or this or that. It was more so like, you need to go to school, you need to do the things that you're supposed to do, and you need to work hard so that we collectively, you as siblings, we don't want you working as hard as I'm having to work. So honestly, I think it was really about survival. It was the beauty of all of the things that kids experience, the beauty of neighborhoods, the beauty of family, the beauty of loyalty. But what undergirded that, I think, was the need to survive. And then, trying to, thrive beyond that. So yeah, and I'm sure that has, in some ways it's shaped how I parent. There are some ways it's shaped it, and I'm not even aware of it. And there are other ways that I've worked very hard to be sure that my kids, that they experience life, that they're not shielded from the skill to survive. If I'm not there, or if their dad is not there, if my family is not there, you need to know how to survive in this world without us. And then I hope to have, parented, we try to parent them in a way so that they also understand while you are responsible for your life, and there's a degree that you're responsible for with your family, you're also responsible for your community. Because at some point, your gifts and your talents and your education is only going to take you so far. You're in a community, and so there are community issues that you need to be prepared to tackle. And so I'm still figuring out, how all of that shaped me, but I think those are some of the ways.
We're all still figuring it out.
Yeah.
A common thread, though, that I hear is for many of us growing up with these strong Black women and their experiences, it was a necessity for them to be these strong Black women, and thankful, appreciative of their journey and how that positively impacted us in terms of encouraging us educationally, environmentally, the values that we have. Well, I also hear this commonality of wanting something different for our daughters, where their ideas of what Black excellence is, that they can kind of write what that story is, and not having to take on everything, and not having to work as hard for there to be more of this balance that maybe our mothers didn't experience and that we're still trying to find for ourselves.
I would agree.
Yeah. And so even before we began recording, we were having a conversation about hair. And when I talk to others and when I'm doing trainings, and I'm saying if you are working with Black women clients and hair has never come up, there's something wrong with your therapy, because that is so important or so dominant within Black women culture. And that there's a history of hair and complexion that is wonderful and beautiful, but then it can also be very hurtful and painful for us. So let's jump into a conversation about that. How do you see hair and complexion intertwining with your experience and your experience raising little Black girls?
Well, I definitely grew up in the perm era, and I always had a lot of hair. So the messages that I received about my hair were that it needed to be tamed. Oh, this is a lot of work. You should just perm this because pressing and takes it too long. And those were the kind of messages that I heard when I grew up. And then that on the top of never being able to cut it, like you cannot cut your hair. That is just why would you want to do that? And so when everybody started getting Jerry curls and all of that, I really wanted one, and my mom was not having that, and I just like harassed her till she finally let me have it. But the condition of that was that the person who did it, which was a cousin, like in her basement, had to cut off all my hair. And so my mom didn't actually know that. And so when I came home, it was like, oh my God. And then on top of that, because my hair was so thick, it did not respond to any products. So my hair wanted to be natural a long time ago, because I have one good picture of me in that curl, and it's like on picture day I survived, but after that it looked like it was just an afro, and that is not when natural hair was in. So it was a big deal. I really got teased during that school year. Like, it was just a horrible year. I think I was traumatized really by that. As I got older, I moved when I moved to Texas, because I'm from Kansas City. I didn't have a lot of money, and so I kind of had to get natural. And so, but that was like in 2003. So here, a lot of people weren't natural. It was like, how do you take care of this? How do you do it? So it was a journey for me. But one of the things I could remember thinking is, as soon as I get money, I'm going to get a perm. That was kind of, it was still there. And so I went back to it, but then I've been natural now about, I think, maybe 10 or 15 years. I can't even remember anymore, but I just, somewhere along the lines, I decided to do it and embrace it. And for me, my family is small, so it's always been a unit. It's been me, my mom, and my daughter. And so kind of bringing them along on the hair journey, because at first it was like, are you going to do something with your hair? This kind of stuff my mom would say, when are you going to get your hair done? But once it started kind of, I guess, growing, I got better at it and more adept at doing it myself. Even if I couldn't go to the hairdresser, then they kind of joined along. And so my daughter was the last one. She had a perm until probably about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. And she was like, no, I just can't manage it. I have too much hair. Because, mine has since thinned out, but hers is still like at that super thick stage. So she was just like, there is no way to do it. And so she finally, when she went, just before she went to London, she went natural, because we went to listen to somebody speak about hair. And the woman said that in, I guess, autopsies or x-rays, something about there was like a green layer from the lye and perms on people's brains during, after having them for years. But she said, then she also said that those chemicals go into your body, and they can get into your bloodstream and affect your ability to both have a child, but also your child. And that was the day my daughter went natural, because she's all about, she wants to be married and have kids. And so that was the day she went natural. And so ever since then, we've all been natural. And it's something, it's been, challenges and embrace. But I will say that our attitude, I think my attitude about my hair is totally opposite of what I grew up with. Like, I love it. I embrace it. I've had, silk presses and different things like that. But it's like, now I'm so, I guess, thankful for my hair and the texture and the different things you can do with it, that even then I'm like, okay, well, I have a silk press for like 3 days. I'm over it now. I'm ready back for my twist. And now I'm locking my hair. So that's also been a new journey for me. So yeah, but I love my black hair.
I had to think about the hair journey when I talk to the girls because we go through so much with them. But I actually had a really colorful hair journey growing up and through our household. And I thought about it because there were some of these things where I started thinking about what part of my life or what part of my growing up do I say either heal or bury or let go and or hold on to, heal or hold on to. And so I thought about honestly, in our house, we never had this this theme of like seeking to be white when it came to hair.
Right.
But there was this idea that hair is a thing that we have to manage. We have to
Right.
do something, but it wasn't like we would strive to get closer to whiteness because that was somehow the goal. It was just that Black girl, we have a lot going on. And so with your hair, it cannot be unkempt. It cannot be all over the place. And so I also grew up with a self-professed tomboy who said, I don't know how to do this with girls. And so we were going to Miss Sally or Miss So-and-so and Miss Who to do our hair, literally braided or perm it or whatever, because my mom couldn't really style hair. She couldn't do a lot with hair. So I knew that hair was a thing. We were talking about it all the time. My sister and I had two different textures, completely what you mentioned, Megan, like she had very coarse hair. She got a curl without the activator to soften her texture, and it took all her hair out. That was a whole thing in school. We got our hair done the same way, and it was not, we needed different things. We needed different products for our hair. And my mom didn't even really think to know that, and she shouldn't have. Also, because I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, inner city Atlanta, and hair was a thing in Atlanta. And ironically, my mother's godmother was Robbie Bronner, who is the founder, basically co-founder of Bronner Brothers Hair Company. And so that was another thing as part of growing up too. We didn't have a lot, and we didn't have a lot in our lineage of family. But what my parents did was always expose us to people that looked like us, that were doing just their regular lives. And if that meant that they were successful with that or not, we were able to see a lot of people growing up. And Atlanta gave us that opportunity, but it was like, I saw Black people who were, doing way better than we were. And I didn't think, I wish I could be. It's just more like, that's just what it looks like. Black people do a lot of stuff. And so interestingly, we went to the hair shows every year. My dad was at one point a marketing rep for their putting stock in their shelves. And so we saw products. We saw when they changed to a botanicals line from the more straight, smooth look to more of a natural look, when that was a thing before. When I got to college and I got box perms in the dorm rooms and my hair fell out, I got color from my roommate who never had a license in her life to do hair. So it's just been a long journey with that. I mean, I got to Georgia, and that was my final stop. When I got to Georgia and tried a few different places out that I'm sure Kimber probably tried out too, to get our hair done, and it just didn't do right. I just stopped getting my hair relaxed because I felt like at this point, it's getting shorter and shorter and shorter as the products or whoever's doing it is putting their hands in my hair. I started going natural then. So it's been almost 20 years now that I have not been relaxed. My family has been through a journey. My sister has waist length locks that she started at Howard when she went from a very short style. My brother had locks. They didn't work out. My dad even had them, who was a man who always believed in straight hair is your glory, and Black women in straight hair, which is actually why I began keeping my hair straight, because I was a daddy's girl, and I knew that was like something he would set the standard for, of like what you should have. And Black men, that's just what they like. So I began keeping my hair straight. Honestly, I had to realize that when I was younger, because like my dad kind of made me think that was like this ideal, and anything he said was golden. So we've been through a lot. My mom, who went from dyeing her hair Black every year of her life and only wearing her hair straight because corporate America, you have to have it pulled together, has been natural and wears twist outs for the last 10 years, I guess. And so I actually really enjoy that. I enjoy the journey of it all, because we came from a place where I know that they may have had internalized messages, my dad and my mom, about what hair meant and what it looked like. But I think about how our just trajectory and how I can tell my girls, they have no limits. Like when it talks about hair, their ideal about what hair is, it just is. They believe their hair is the glory, and that white people want to look like them. And not that it should be one or the other. The fact that they can have that ideal that like, I don't have to come into life with this standard of what my hair needs to be. I want it this way for this look, or I want it this way for this look, but not I want my hair a certain way because I believe that's what society wants me to have. And I love it. I love that they get to grow up in a time where that is their standard and not this, I'm striving to be somebody that I think I have to be, which we did get a little bit of, but not, you know, in a way that was more, okay, well, we'll figure it out. And I think that, again, I hope to give them a similar journey where we'll always be figuring out hair. I think that's also a funny thing. And one thing that I do delight in some ways when I'm not wrangling these two heads, I can delight in that as part of the Black girl struggle, because it's just something we'll always have as our thing. It just is. And I choose to embrace that that's today. So when I get on the weekend and it's wash day, don't come and ask me the same question. But I do believe it is the beauty of us being Black women. So I had to think about that a while back, about just that journey, how my life, I didn't come from an oppressed place, but I came from a place where my parents definitely had in their purview what they probably had to experience and what it meant. But it was more of, how do we get it together, and not how do you become somebody else? You know what I mean? So I think that's what I took with me, that you are who you are, and hair is just a part of that. And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah. I think my experience, and it was definitely aligned with my racial identity, how my hair has transitioned as I've grown into myself and being natural for 8 years now. And my daughters, we all have different textures. So it's like, okay, this person gets this product, this person gets this product, this person gets this product. So it is a full adventure. Sometimes I try to tackle 2 heads in a day. Most days I cannot do that because it's a lot of work. And I think growing up, there just weren't the products there for natural hair. There was not that representation for natural hair. There were these internalized ideas of straight hair is better and you want to have long hair. Also the ideas of like light skin, that's more beautiful. And even like still today, when babies are being born in my family, there's that one person, what color are their ears? That's going to be the determinant of their.
It's still happening. It's still happening.
Still very alive in this family. But for my daughters, my hope is that they will always be natural, or they will decide what they get to do with their hair. That wasn't an option that was I probably had my first kitty perm at 5 years old. So if they choose to use a relaxer, which I'm hoping they will not, but if they choose to, that will be their decision. But I'm hoping that they grow up really being able to embrace their hair, understand how to do their hair, have the freedom and flexibility that they can have a wide range of hairstyles, and then very intentional. Especially my one daughter, she has a lot of hair, and it's thick hair and it's curly hair. And my other daughter, literally 10 minutes, I can wash and style her hair.
That's Avery Marley.
The older twin, she's like, why is it taking me 3 hours to get my hair done? And she is literally just playing the time. So I think her journey may be a little bit different, but I'm very intentional of, it takes, your hair so beautiful and it's so thick, so we have to take longer to do it. We want to make sure that we're keeping your hair safe and protecting it. Those sort of words and that sort of language, and not saying things that like, oh, I don't know what we're gonna do, or it's too much, or but really honoring and celebrating that. Now, like Eliza, watch day, that crying, that just, okay, we got to get your hair done. So let's all take a breath here. But at the base of it, trying to come at them with love and compassion and celebration about their hair and their complexion.
I think thinking about what you said, I'm still figuring that piece out. My daughter, I think I get the most accurate reading on the messages I've given my daughter, like in parenting about hair, complexion, when I see her now. Like my older daughter, Zaylee, she wants to have nothing to do with like committing to any type of style, like she'll like be like, I'm cutting all of my hair off today. And I'm like, oh, well, okay, well, what do you mean you're gonna cut it off, Zaylee? Let's slow down. Like, cause she'll just go literally from one thing to the next. And she'll diet one day. And I'm like, well, why don't we get you a professional to help you? And I know a lot of it is generational too. She's like, no, I've already looked on YouTube. I know how to do it. I know and I'm like, Zaylee, let's not. So when she wanted to do this big chop, I think maybe 5 years ago, maybe. And I was like, well, Zaylee, okay, so we started with an undercut like many, many years ago because she wanted to do that. And then she was like, okay, yeah. But she did not like the idea of having to deal with her hair. And my fear and what I suspect is that I communicated that over the years, like because it was 3 and 4 hour sessions, and it was the combing, and it was then the blow drying, and then it was like the braiding it and trying to figure out, so we went through all of the phases, where she wanted to have it straightened. So we let her have it straightened sometimes. And then when it was natural, and she's extremely tender-headed, like compared to my younger daughter. So any type of pull or anything like that would send her into tears. And then it would send me into tears, and then like rage. And then my husband would join, like, well, maybe we just need to and I'm like, no, you need to stay out of this. This is not you, okay? And so just trying to figure out, I don't know. Like, so I look back and we laugh now because every month she's doing something different. Like I picked her up last week and she had installed a full like wig that she had ordered online, but then 2 weeks before then she had cut it all off. So there are some complex things and messaging I think that she has received, but I do think in there's some freedom, and I do like that. And so I think part of the learning experience for me as an older parent, I was much younger when she was younger, and just trying to figure out like, what do we do with all of this hair, and like, how do we do it? One of the challenges to me is that, how do I embrace this, right? Because when she calls and she's like, well, I'm going to the hair store and I just think I'm gonna braid all my hair today. And if that doesn't work out, she's calling 6 hours later. Yeah, like none of that worked out. I think I'm gonna go. So I have to like temper my frustration because I'm like, Zaylee, just do something, like, or just keep it cut or do this. And so I'm still learning. I think there are some messages there that I may have contributed to, or maybe have even created. And I think there is an element of freedom that she has, that she's just like, well, this is what I feel like today. I'm over this, I'm over this look. I think I'm gonna grow my hair out now. Well, I'm over this look. I think I'm gonna, so we are getting better than what we used to be. But I think there were definitely some messages, like what, you have what is supposed to happen, right? We're gonna do your hair this weekend. And then like the actual doing the hair that weekend that just went wrong or went south many, many times. And I think from there, she just got like, I don't even want to have to deal with like a 4 hour hair experience. And I want to be able to just do whatever I want to do. And with my youngest daughter, I sort of see that, but she's not as like tender-headed, and she's not, so we both have a little bit more capacity, when we're like, okay, this is going to be a 3 hour event, or 4 hour, but so that it's interesting because yeah, the kids are so different. And then I'm much different now than I was 15 years ago. And so I think the hair is definitely a thing, and we're still figuring it out. And I also probably taught them a lot because like you, Eliza, it was very colorful. I had curls at 7, and it was, then I had the perms, and then I got it cut. And so, and even now, I'll get up and I'm like, I just told my husband last week, I think I need to go with a different type of locks. I'm not feeling the interlocking. And he was like, well, he and the kids are like, oh, okay. We sort of knew it would be something different, in a month or two. So it's all complicated,
I love the way everyone has used the word journey, because it's so, and it's lifelong, so that's what's so interesting about it. And Eliza, I like how you said all of us are acknowledging it. This really is our thing as Black women. Like this is us.
The good and the bad.
The good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful,
Yeah.
all of it. But thinking about my mom coming from a generation where she would get, the hot comb, and she detested that and said, I will not do that to my child. So
My mother would have said that.
so I never in my life ever had a hot comb.
Ooh, bless you.
Right. But that meant at 3, she bought that box perm and put that thing in my hair when I was 3. So I some of my earliest memories really of just her with some plastic gloves going through with the cream. So it's that whole process of, what your mother, her experience and how that shapes you. So I never had a hot comb. And I remember I grew up in Atlanta, in Decatur, and everybody, you never had a hot comb, girl? It was just such a foreign thing. All that to say, when my daughter came along, her texture hair is very, very different than mine. And I was like, okay, well, here we go. Between the knees, combing, all day. And an interesting thing that I kind of saw through her experience that I never really experienced myself, is her hair is very long. And that's not, my hair wasn't long. And so that was really a big thing with how people responded to her. That was like, wow, this is really interesting. Like strangers in the store, people just coming up and like touching her hair and stuff like that. And I really, really started to realize, wow, as Black people, we're kind of fixated on that in an interesting kind of way, the length and all of that. I don't, for her, I do think she has embraced like those messages with her sense of self. I don't know that I intentionally contributed to that. My thing was just, let's just keep it neat and spend the time that we need to spend on it. Having one son and one daughter, I do remember thinking, oh wow, if I had another daughter, this would be wow. So bless y'all who have 2 heads, multiple heads to do. But I think that's something that she's incorporated into her identity. Just that having long hair as a black woman. I don't know that she will keep her hair long, that she can do whatever she wants. She's an athlete. So it's always been, kind of a balance too of how to style her hair and, play her sport. But, as far as the perm thing for me, when I got to the point that I had gone natural before I had children. And then when I had my daughter, I was going through sort of a phase of, I don't feel like I look good, or I feel unattractive. And I had a short crop fro, and, I had to go get it cut very frequently. And I was like, with the baby, I was like, I can't keep going in. And what am I going to do with her when I'm trying to go get my hair cut? So I decided to put a texturizer in my hair. And then the next thing I did was I got a perm. And the reason I stopped getting perms was because it hurt so bad. I have a very sensitive scalp. And I remember when the next time I got a perm, and I said, well, that didn't hurt as bad as my labor pains. I said, you know what? That makes no sense. I should not be subjecting myself to anything that I'm comparing to labor pains. And that was it. That's the last time I got a perm. I said, okay, I'm just that just is ridiculous. There's no logic that's going to take me back to getting a perm. So, all that to say, that journey, I'm on my journey. Lauren, my daughter, is on her journey. We compare notes on products. Our hair is different, so we compare notes on products. She takes my stuff. I look up and like, Lauren, where's my stuff?
Parenting notes.
Just kind of getting through it together at this point. I appreciate her at this age. We're sort of, we compare notes, and we talk about natural hair and where we are, and what we're using. And it's nice to have her as a partner in that journey.
I think to Kimber's point, like you mentioned having 3 different textures of hair and how you all have 3 different products. We're same in our house. But I think about how we were growing up, they didn't even have that conversation that there could be different, that there should even be different products, or getting a perm was the only way, or anything close to a perm, texturized or Jheri curl was the only way to manage your hair. When we are able to know now that you don't have to have a perm or hot comb to manage your hair, even if you do want to be smooth or straighter, you can have a natural, unrelaxed hair and still have a straight look. We didn't even have those options. So I think that is what I enjoy. The other part Michelle was going to bring up, you mentioned about the long hair. And I think about how a lot of that so much is still in our community, that we talk about this long hair and the glory of that and the amazement, when I feel a certain kind of way on both sides about the fact that our non-Black communities seem to marvel at non-straight hair more now than they did before, or they like the textured look. They marvel at this kinky, curly look. And I feel, like I said, I feel kind of 2 ways about that, where I'm like, okay, we've come so far, but then I'm like, I still kind of have my soapbox about a lot of stuff. So, but either way, that I think about how a lot of those messages that we carry on as Black people, that the standard in this diversity of hair is not necessarily as, now we still have the corporate America issues and the universal institutional issues, and that's still very present. But I think about how much more media and TV and marketing values this textured look so much now, and this kinky look. I think about the girls, when Marley's first experience with that was going to a kinder music class when she was like 3, and they do like movement and they do drums and all this stuff. And she used to wear balls, like 2 like puff balls on her hair. For a very long time. I also can admit I don't know a lot about how to do different styles besides usually balls, ponytails, braid, 2 braids. I don't know how to do all the different, so I have to take her somewhere. Either way, she had 2 balls. And I remember they were doing a circular dance, and one of the parents like literally was walking in the circle with her child. And as she walked by Marley, she kind of like, pop, pop, like, oh, like kind of grabbed the little paw. She just wanted to feel it. I could tell. And I caught it. And I was like, wait a minute, what was that? And I could just see that she was probably thinking about it and probably just imagining what must that puff feel like, and I want to touch it. And we had a whole discussion about it. And I was thinking, wow, this is real. This is my first child. It's my first experience with this whole journey that we're talking about. But I thought about how she was marveling at like this thing that she couldn't have and that she wanted to see. And it was, of course, very inappropriate for her to touch my child like this. And we had to talk about that. And she was so taken aback, and she's so cute. It's just so cute is what she kept saying. And I'm like, okay, it can be so cute without you having to grab my baby's hair, which if we go far, is this really you assaulted her? I mean, but either way, I just thought about how that was, we've changed in a lot of ways, where I wonder how much we maintain those messages as Black people that we don't necessarily have to. We could be more free. And I think in some ways we limit ourselves on that understanding by that Kimber's color thing that does still happen with the ears, or the long hair thing with Black women, and how that's an amazement now to have long hair and be Black, as if you can't have multiple lengths of hair. So I just wonder about that journey part of our community and non-Black communities, and what we kind of how we share those messages.
Yeah, there's this mystery and this exoticism, and then even as we get older, eroticism of Black hair and Black women, and we see that happening outside of our communities, but we also see that still being perpetuated and internalized within our communities too. And I imagine that we could have a full conversation too about people just being drawn to our Black girls' hair and wanting to touch it and to feel it, and as mama bears, the reaction we have to that. And I had all these other questions that we have not been able to go to, because I knew once we started talking about hair, it was just going to be a wrap. So we're going to have to come back for a part 2.
I was just thinking that. I was like, it has to be a part 2.
A part 2 to finish this conversation, because I do want to respect everybody's time. I do so appreciate hearing our own journeys as little Black girls, and how important our own mothers' experiences have had with us, or has had on us, and then how that has made us be more intentional or mindful in terms of what we're doing in raising our daughters. But definitely we need to continue this conversation. So tune back in for the part 2 of this, and there'll be more information about all of our speakers here today in the link and in the chat box. So thank you all so much for your time today. And please feel free to follow Counseling Black Women to learn more about the events and experiences we're doing in improving and working to focus on the mental wellness of Black women. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kimber.
Yeah.
Thank you.